Chapter 62:51. Jimmy, who was relieved, suddenly realized a problem and said to Charlie quickly, "Mr. Wade, I'm going back to the United States to settle my family. I won't be arrested as soon as I land, right?" Charlie smiled and said, "Whether you will be arrested depends entirely on Steve." After that, Charlie said to Steve, "Steve, tell your butler not to send the evidence to the FBI. If you have sent it, withdraw it and let them pretend they have not seen it." Steve immediately said, "Don't worry, Mr. Wade, I'll send him a message." Jimmy said worriedly, "Mr. Wade, I'm afraid that my boss will not let me go. This guy is too sinister. He deliberately created opportunities for us to make mistakes and collect evidence of our crimes, just to control us at the critical moment." Charlie said lightly, "Don't worry. Even if your boss sends all the evidence of your crimes to the FBI, Steve has a way to keep you safe." Steve on the side nodded and said, "Mr. Wade, don't worry, whether to arrest him or not depends on your word. As long as you say to arrest him, I will get him sentenced to life imprisonment directly. If you say not to arrest him, even the President of the United States can't arrest him." Jimmy knew that Steve was reminding himself not to play tricks. In fact, he was completely overthinking. Things had come to this point. Even if he was given 10 courage, he would never dare to play tricks. Charlie suddenly thought of something at this time, so he asked Jimmy, "Your boss is cheating you so much, do you want to give him a hand?" When Jimmy heard this, his eyes widened and he said excitedly, I want to so much. If the killing was not against the law, the first thing I would do when I land back was to kill him." Charlie nodded and smiled. "Since you want to, then this matter is easy to handle." After that, he looked at Steve and said, "Call Ellis's boss later and tell him that you just found out that Jimmy is a distant relative of an old friend of yours in China. As the saying goes, there is no acquaintance without fighting. You have already put aside your past grudges and become friends. Tell him not to embarrass Jimmy again in the future." Steve was puzzled and didn't understand why Charlie did this. But he still nodded very cooperatively and said, "Okay, Mr. Wade, I'll talk to him later." Charlie turned to Jimmy and said, "After you return to the United States, the boss of Ellis will definitely invite you to dinner. While inviting you back, he will take the opportunity to ask you about your specific situation. You can tell him that your former sister-in-law's current husband is Steve's good friend. You had a little misunderstanding at the wedding, and then you quickly talked it out. He will definitely invite you back to Ellis. You can say that you have promised your former sister-in-law and her husband that you will come to China to help them. Then take this opportunity to ask him to send 10 experienced lawyers from Ellis to come to China with you to help. You have to select these 10 people, and you have to pick the best in all aspects. The term of help is the same as yours, which is 10 years. Of course, all the salaries and travel allowances of these 10 lawyers in the next 10 years will be paid by him." Charlie said, "Oh, by the way, let him pay your salary as well, so that you don't have to come to China to work for 10 years in vain." After that, Charlie continued, "But you can only take 30% of your salary. The remaining 70% will be transferred monthly to the dog farm that Steve just mentioned. It needs funds for continued operation there. Just think of it as your contribution to the dog farm." When Jimmy heard the word dog farm, his heart beat fast. So he hurriedly said, "Don't worry, Mr. Wade, I will do everything you say." Steve, who was standing next to him, was dumbfounded when he heard this. Ellis was the largest law firm in the United States. The lawyers who could work in this law firm were the elite selected from thousands of people. If Jimmy was allowed to choose at will, then choosing 10 top lawyers would be like cutting off Ellis's aorta. Moreover, the annual salary of 10 top lawyers was not low. Counting senior partners like Jimmy, the annual salary of 11 people, plus travel expenses, all would be at least more than $100 million a year. 10 elites missing, and $100 million had to be thrown in every year. For Ellis, it is definitely a heavy blow.